And we're here to do the news. And Gifty Andapia is right here. Good morning to you, Gifty. I hope you had a great weekend.
Good morning, Roland. I had a good weekend. Tried to rest, connect with family a little bit, and I think I'm blessed. How are you doing?
I'm blessed too.
All right. So I'm hoping that we'll have a good day, and I'm hoping that all of you had good weekends as well. We're here to try and brighten up your day. Hopefully we get to do it. If you think we're not doing it right, we love your feedback. So send us a WhatsApp message, and then we'll try and straighten it up. I will try and straighten Roland up, you know. I'm always the, you know. Anyway, all right, so let's do the news right now. And Public Health Director of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly, Florence Kuchi, says enforcing the mandatory wearing of face masks in public places has become challenging after some of her officials were subdued to physical abuse on the field. She explained that her officers will try to inquire why people weren't wearing their face masks and draw some attacks, despite a directive from the president for people to wear it. Florence Kuchi indicates that some section of the Assembly's bylaws empower them to sue people who disobey the directives. Madam Kuchi was speaking on COVID and the law, a legal show on this channel.
In fact, enforcing the wearing of face masks hasn't been easy as an environmental health officer when we go to the field. Sometimes people abuse us. We even receive slaps. Some of my staff have received slaps.
Really?
Yes, just trying to ask somebody why you are not in mask, try and get a mask. And I always say it is the attitude of the Ghanaian. Typical Ghanaian is always afraid of a change. When you want to change, to direct the typical Ghanaian to change from the old existing that they are to a new place, they are always afraid into that change. Okay, so the Town Ordinance Cap 86, Section 39, it says that it is against the law for anybody when there is an outbreak of an infectious disease, and then the environmental health inspector asks you to stay at a place so that you will not spread the disease, and then you refuse. So you are liable to be taken to court, and you pay a penalty not less than 150 penalty unit. Yeah.
Leaders of some churches in Kokomlemle right here in Accra are asking government to review some of the safety protocols they must adhere to enable them conduct church services. My visit to many of the churches in the vicinity showed closed auditoriums, despite a lifting of restrictions imposed to curb the spread of coronavirus. Hannah Odami has been speaking to some church heads and members and has this report.
One by one, they came from their homes to the church premise, a place most members tell me they've missed dearly.
I was really overjoyed to come to church today. So when our pastor declared today a Thanksgiving and we're supposed to wear white, it was something that I felt that God had spoken to me, and I was so much joyful that today I couldn't sleep. I was waiting for a day to break for me to come to church today.
But before they could enter, they had to go through 4 safety protocols: washing of hands, checking of temperature, writing of their names, and then sanitizing their hands. Inside the Calvary Christian Center, seats were numbered from 1 to 100. And the head pastor, Doris Antonio, tells me this is to enable them comply with the directive. She was excited seeing her members, and she preached on Thanksgiving.
But in all this, we can give thanks for the fact that now we can meet. I'm so glad I can see my brothers and my sisters. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Some of the members explained how they had to strictly adhere to the protocols.
Like, there are some people when you see them, you feel like hugging, but you have to remember that you have to social distance ourselves, so we couldn't hug. We just gave high five in the air.
At the Assemblies of God Family Life branch here at Circle, church service had just closed, and the head pastor, Eugene Kwame Ening, told me he's going to hold 2 services for now. He has a congregation of about 500 members. The members have been encouraged to come to church early enough so they can go through all the protocols before church actually begins. The pastors made a plea to government.
Putting the offering bowl outside For heaven's sake, I respect my leaders. I respect my leader. I want to beg, leaving it outside, when we forget ourselves, any deviant, any person at all can come and carry it away.
Even though you complied today?
Yes, we complied today, yes. I want to encourage my fellow pastors and churches, let's get back to the church. I agree with the bigger churches. I agree with them because the protocols are several, such that they cannot be able to cope with it. However, those of us who are a bit small, we are managing. And I believe with time, I know we have no problem with anybody. Our problem is with Corona.
The 1 hour that they have given us is not sufficient. If they are able to extend it maybe to 1.5 hours, I believe that maybe they are thinking people will feel uncomfortable in the nose masks. That's why they give the 1 hour. But if they can extend it, it will help us.
So largely, most of the churches here in Kokomlemle, in the Greater Accra region, are closed. But for those who are opened, the safety protocols are being adhered to. The members are happy to be back, and church has begun. For Joy News, I am Hannah Odami.
And I'd love to hear from you. Were you in church? How did it go? Now, a research by the Secondita Accra Chamber of Commerce and Industry has revealed that 20.8% of workers in the Western region have lost their jobs due to the coronavirus outbreak. The research also indicates that 9 businesses, mostly in the construction and jewelry sectors, shut down completely during the first quarter of 2020. Correspondent Inathalia Kwansa reports.
The shutdown of these businesses, according to the Deputy CEO of the Chamber, who led the research, Benjamin Nipani, was due to low or non-existent demands.
I would say that for this quarter, we have the highest percentage of business respondents saying that they had a bad quarter since we started doing this work since the last quarter of 2016. Even when it came to expectation, we had the lowest so far. For the past quarters that we've been doing, the lowest ever we've had for expectation was 78%. But this time, we had as low as 58% of respondents expecting a positive next quarter, which tells us that the coronavirus plus a combination of the effect that it brought really affected businesses within the Western region and beyond negatively.
The Chamber's first quarter survey on the performance of businesses in the Western region also established that local demand for goods and services drastically halted due to the pandemic. Mr. Benjamin Nipani has therefore advised the business community in the Western region to adopt digitalization to avoid being affected by such unforeseen contingencies.
I would say businesses everywhere, and especially in our region, has a future if we would only learn the lessons. For example, if you found out that you are not set up for digital work, will you quickly do a website? Will you quickly have a Momo account where you can begin to receive money digitally? Will you now do a process where you can take work digitally, do it, and go and deliver without even the person coming to you? Because it is when you can do this that it doesn't matter whether there's a lockdown or not, your business will still thrive. But if you only thrive when the customer walks to your door, then when there is a problem and they say close or shut down, then it means you will not have any turnover. So I would say that there are challenges. We found the challenges. People should have to quickly now begin to work on those challenges. And integrating digital work into the level of delivery is key. You have to see how you have to incorporate technology into how you deliver your business to your clients.
The first quarter business survey was for the first time conducted digitally. There was, however, some associated challenges as many of the businesses were not digitally inclined. Inathalia Kwansa, Joy News, Western Region.
In other news, a group, the Concerned Citizens of the Upper West region, have petitioned traditional, religious and some opinion leaders in the region to prevail upon the Electoral Commission of Ghana to change its mind about the new voters register. Now, the spokesperson of the group, Prosper Pioyere, says the constitutional instrument, the CI 126, will not only disenfranchise many people in the Upper West region, but also denationalize them as well. Rafiq Salam has more.
According to the spokesperson of concerned citizens of the Upper West region, Prosper Poire, many people in the Upper West region will not only be disenfranchised from taking part in the 2020 polls, but will lose their nationality if constitutional instrument CI 126, which is currently laid before Parliament, matures on June 10. He said the requirement for one to be a holder of a Ghanaian passport or a Ghana card before he or she is registered will disenfranchise many Upper Westerners because less than 1% of the region's population have access to the Ghanaian passport.
Only an infinitesimal number of citizens of the Upper West region are in possession of the Ghana passport as travel documents outside Ghana. Your Majesties, as you know, are not an exception to the lack of ownership of the Ghanaian passport. In fact, our checks proves that we have less than 1% of the over 700,000 people living in the Upper West region who are in possession of a Ghana passport. And it is also very sad to know that only about 26,000 of the about 700,000 residents of the Upper West region possess the Ghana card. This means that technically our people are either being denationalized or will be disenfranchised in one way or the other.
It is therefore based on the aforementioned reasons that the group are petitioning traditional, religious and opinion leaders in the region to take a serious look at the issue. This they did before addressing the media, standing on the shoulders of the road and under a keep-up tree few meters away from the Upper West Secretariat of the National House of Chiefs.
At any point in time that we feel sidelines, at any point in time that we feel pressed to the extent that we find difficulties in briefing, we would have to run to those who are naturally put in place as leaders of our society to speak on our behalf. We submit this petition to the Upper West Regional House of Chiefs, the Catholic bishops of the Diocese of Wa, the regional chief imam, the regional president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim missions, the regional peace council, the president of the Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and indeed to all who can speak out to save a people who are being disenfranchised and denationalized for no cause of theirs.
Concerned citizens are of the belief that the Electoral Commission is working in concert with the National Identification Authority to undermine the identity of the masses of the people as citizens of Ghana and further deny them their inalienable right to vote in the 2020 polls.
This will ultimately have adverse repercussions on the representation of our people in future governments and the development of our region. Your Majesties, it is appropriate to avert our minds to the fact that the figures on the voters' roll from any particular geographical area do not only serve the purpose of elections, but such figures contribute significantly in determining the distributions of the national cake, as well as for the purposes of the creation of new constituencies, districts, municipalities, and regions. It is our concern that should the EC be allowed to proceed with this unpopular registration, our region will technically be disadvantaged in all these perspectives.
Reporting for Joy News, Rafiq Salam. Wow.
And we're right here in Accra. Please make sure you get interactive. But I have to say this, it is the 40th birthday of the wife of one of our best HR heads right here, Raymond Labi. Your wife, Elsie, is celebrating 4 decades of life given by God. And you say that you love her so much. We also right here, Joy News Say and the AM Show, have a great happy birthday, Mrs. Elsie Labi. That takes us for a break. We'll be right back. Well, Akase Brimpong, and what a way for us to get the newspaper started, and Gifty.
Yeah, featuring Joe Metal there.
Yes,
very nice song. I don't know, and I hope say we shall also.
Amen. Amen.
All right, Roland, it's good to do the show with you. You know, what did you say? Come on. Okay.
It's a natural thing. And just the world can as a bisa.
All right, so good morning to you all once again if you're just joining us.
I have a good friend in Boko called Sally Fukomba. Have I introduced you to him?
Boko? No, you haven't. Of course not.
He's the head of primary healthcare pharmacy at the Boku Presbyterian Hospital. I'm surprised that you haven't heard me mention his name before. I think that you have to get used to him.
That's a nice way of mentioning it anyway.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, one of my friends who's watching from Tako has been commenting about your shirt. His name is MC Nana K. MC Nana K, good morning. Yes, he says he loves the shirt.
Is he the one who said why I folded the money?
Yes. He says it's Monday, so
yeah,
he's wondering why you folded it.
I think I've been folding it for a lot of years.
Yeah. I actually like folded shirts. So.
Yeah, Obama does it a lot.
Yeah, Obama. We're all learning from Obama. Okay, let's get right on to the newspapers this morning. Okay, I don't want to start with this one. Let me start with Ghanaian Times newspaper.
Right.
All right, so Ghanaian Times newspaper says, it comes with a picture of Professor Ken Atefa, the NIA boss, and it says NIA distributes 3 million cards from today at 5,635 registration centers nationwide. I'm interested to find out, okay, let me try and adjust this one a little bit. Okay, I did it. So, I'm interested to find out which places they're going, how social distancing protocols will be observed, how wearing of masks will be observed. That will be a key indicator for us to see what the others will be like. And government donates Veronica Barkett's face masks to churches, mosques. That story is on page 12 of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. NCA poised to set price ceiling for telecommunication services, page 13. It comes with a picture of Mrs. Esla Owusu Ekufu, the communications minister. And the money identifies challenges in Tema Port clearing system, but GRA denies claims, and that's on page 20 of the newspaper, the Ghanaian Times newspaper. NLAVAG grant licenses to private lotto operators. That story is on page 14. And if you grab a copy of Ghanaian Times, you get a picture of what to do, what not to do, how to wear your mask. Make sure that it covers your nose, as I'm struggling to do so, you know, because once you speak, the mask goes down sometimes. But yeah, make sure you cover it as well. On the back page of the Ghanaian Times, displaced Wager residents count their losses 1 week after dam spillage. Also an annual cycle, and it comes with a picture of what is described as submerged homes at Wager. Photo by Seth Osabuke. And the sanitation bylaws to prosecute those who dump refuse in drains. That's the Atachia, Minister for Works and Housing, talking to MMDAs. The story is from Amatichua Ampedua Jimakoforidjo. Amatichua, good morning, my mate from GIJ. So that's this for the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Shall I do one more newspaper?
Please
all right,
do.
okay. So let me back that up with the Ghanaian Times, the Daily Graphic. The Daily Graphic newspaper comes with a very big story. Avert this danger, and it's showing a picture of a bridge that looks like it's collapsing, and it says that the damaged portion of a bridge at Racecourse Container Kwashiman in Accra. Picture by Ebo Hansen. Ebo, good morning to you as well, former colleague at the presidency when I was a presidential correspondent. Ebo took that picture of that bridge that looks like it's collapsing. Vice President launches digital payment platform. That story is on page 3 of the Daily Graphic, and every Ghanaian must be given the opportunity to vote, according to Alhassan Andani, as well as the MD of Stanbic Bank. And NIA begins distribution of cars today. The Daily Graphic doesn't give us the details of how many cars are being distributed, etc., but at least it tells us that the cars are being distributed today. That's a key story to follow. Page 39 of the Daily Graphic has that story. Post-retirement contracts. Lecturers can teach until 70. The story by Severus Kalideri. And it's actually saying that government has announced new rules to guide post-retirement contracts for academic staff of public universities in the country. And under these rules, even though the mandatory retirement age for academic staff of public universities shall continue to stay 60 years, professional grade staff, it continues on the page 3, obviously saying you can stay on if up until 70 years. That's the Daily Graphic. Back page of the Daily Graphic, 6 communities get warehouses for share kennels. And then police arrest driver and mate for transporting illicit drug. This is the Daily Graphic. Let me end it with the Center Spread. Center Spread comes with the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, Ms. Shelley Ayoko-Boche, and then they presenting a gift to Mr. Shi Ting-Wang, who is the outgoing Chinese ambassador to Ghana. He's been very instrumental, very outspoken on issues between Ghana and China. So the Chinese ambassador bids farewell. He's going. Another person will replace him. Closed doors, low turnout, cautious optimism mark church services. We brought you that story here as well. We've been checking some churches around the country, well, around here in Accra, maybe in some other places, how churches went after a long break. And finally, government increases LEAP beneficiary stipend in the wake of COVID-19. That's a great move, I think. So that's the Ghanaian Times and the Daily Graphic newspaper. Okay.
All right. While I wait for you to take the next set, let me just do two, and then you will continue.
Yes,
we have the Daily Guide. And this story, not fascinating. It's a very serious anti-graft story. And it's captioned well by the Daily Guide. It says, venture capital case, NDC CEO to refund 15 million Ghana cedis. And it has an inserted picture of Daniel Duku. And this story, if you follow it, if you had been following it closely up to now, is a story, an effort made by the Attorney General to make sure that officers of the Venture Capital Trust Fund were brought to book under the erstwhile NDC administration, and this is well captured by the Daily Guide. We also do have Saglemi, housing fraud details out. According to the paper, NLA licenses 5 actors and government breaks telecoms monopoly. Huge cannabis seizure also made, all captured on the front page. On the back page is all about sports, and you get to read a bit about the sports we've been missing within this period of coronavirus. Again, we do know that football started elsewhere in Germany, expected to start in England and the rest of the European leagues. We have the Finder newspaper, has on the front page 47,000 Veronica Bucket sets and face masks from government to churches, mosques, palaces. That's a good one. What we need to do is to keep the education and the sensitization ongoing about why they need to use these 47,000 and the other ones that have been placed on the entrances of the mosques and the churches, etc. ICOMS rakes in 177.3 million Ghana cedis at Tema Port in 1 week, and we know that this is all part of the takeover of actions or the activities of GCNet, and there have already been concerns raised by the Ghana Union of Traders Association. Beta Rose not an instrument of death. Nanado, Agri-Cattle Lakeside Estate wins land case against Ni Ajete Obuo II of Teshi. Now, yeah, just do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gold Street Business is what I have here to continue with. Their big story says government recovers 0.3% of its loans to state-owned enterprises. 14.863 billion still outstanding at the end of 2018. That story has a picture of Mr. Stephen Asamoah Boateng, who's Director General of State Interest and Governance Authority. And the first sentence says government by the end of 2018 fiscal year had been able to recover just 4.4 million of its 14,867.4 million in outstanding unlent loans to the various state-owned enterprises. That's a disturbing story, and that's according to the latest 2018 state-owned enterprises report, I believe. And imports clearing problems resolved at Tema Port. 4,200 bills of entry processed in first week. That's also the story that Roland read for you from the Finder newspaper. And GEPA seeks to increase market share of Ghana's cocoa powder. Those are stories on the Gold Street Business back page of the Gold Street Business. Vodafone Cash introduces flexible payment options for customers, and Standard Chartered appoints new corporate finance head for Africa and the Middle East. So the Gold Street newspaper there. Let's do the publisher, and the publisher says, it's also talking about the Tema Port. Tema Port in turmoil with an exclamation sign. It says, over Unipass faulty system, GRA confirms 14 CD car clearance. Okay, 14 CDs? I'm not so sure. So it's interesting how the Gold Street Business reports what's happening at the Tema Port and how the publisher reports it as well. While the Gold Street Business says importing clearing problems resolved at Tema Port, 4,200 bills of entry processed in first week. The publisher says Tema Ports in turmoil over Unipass faulty system. The story is on page 6.
And Gifty, if you follow this story, especially in the lead up to the takeover of the business that GCNet was the undertaking, Unipass, etc., you get to know that we have the new publisher and the Ghanaian publisher. The other is for, the other is against. So this one is... This one is positive.
This one is negative. The publisher, the new publisher is negative.
So the Ghanaian publisher is positive. And this is also captured, but it says ICOMS is the same thing, RIC 100. So it's been reported variedly. And over the weekend, from before the beginning of the weekend, the Ghana Union of Traders Association had indicated they were not happy that traders or importers were having losses as a result of demurrage, the delays, etc.
Demurrage is something that can damage you for a very long time because it just sucks the money out of you.
Definitely.
And I hope that we resolve that particular problem there. It's a big problem, I should say. And there have been a series of protests by the clearing agents at the ports, by the way. I mean, change is difficult. Okay, change is always difficult. So moving from one side to the other, it always brings these agitations. So hopefully we'll be able to clear that out and we move on with our lives, right? Okay, so that's a new publisher. Okay, so after the port, it's reporting that 41 stranded Ghanaians return home from the U.S. That story is on page 6 of the newspaper. And Salt FM CEO sues Reverend Obofo over debt. Interesting. Okay, that story is on page 2 of the new publisher. If you're interested, why don't you quickly make a grab? The Ghanaian Observer is the next one that I have. Okay, Roland, here is the Ghanaian publisher. Okay, so the new publisher and then the Ghanaian publisher, they look pretty similar. And the Ghanaian publisher says ICOMS rakes in over 177 million Ghana cedis at Tema Port in 1 week. And government donates 47,000 PPEs to churches and mosques. Lil Wayne apologizes to Dr. Opuni. It comes with a picture of Dr. Stephen Kobna Opuni, former Cocoa CEO, and then President Akufo-Addo in a chat with Japanese. Well, chat is C-H-A-T. It's not the C-H-A-R-T that we see here. Okay, so people learn from this newspaper, so we have to be careful and get people the right things. So it says President Akufo-Addo in a chat with Japanese ambassador to Ghana, Chotumu Himeno. And Akufo-Addo opens Tema Interchange, says Mahama's unprecedented infrastructure development was a fantasy. That story is on page 2. Finally, on the front page of the Ghanaian publisher, 10 million Ghanaians of voting age registered. That story is attributed to the National Identification Authority. Back page of the newspaper, pictures of the interchange commissioning. President Akufo-Addo and his team here commissioning it. Shout out to all of you who live in Tema, especially Community 9, the place of my birth. Good morning to you all. Roland, shall I continue or do you want to go?
You can
all right, I've got the Ghanaian Observer here. The Ghanaian Observer says government clears ECG's legacy debt. That story is on page 9 and 10. And it comes with a picture of the Minister for Energy, Peter Amewu, and ECG boss, Mr. Kwame Agyemang-Badu. Akufo-Addo punches Mahama over Green Book infrastructure development. Also comes with a picture of the commissioning of the Tema Interchange. NIA to release over 3 million Ghana cars today. Story has been widely reported. NLA licenses 5 private sector lotto operators and alleged illegal importation of sodium cyanide. Judgments set for Tuesday. Backpage Sports. It says Chilwell Chelsea's #1 left back target. Abdul Mumin on Benfica Porto radar, and doctors clear Suarez to play when La Liga. Okay, which one did I miss? Benfica. But I know Benfica.
Okay, okay,
I know, but seriously. Abdul Mumin on Benfica, Porto radar. So That story is on the back page of the Ghanaian Observer.
All right, let's just do two more. As the last one we have, then we get to have our picks, respectively. The Custodian, and we do have the front page. We recognize your sterling leadership, Christians, Muslims to Akufo-Addo, has the Reverend Sam Kranche Ankra thanking government after receiving PP on behalf of the Christian community. And then we also have the story about the Veronica Bacchus 47,000 to churches and mosques. Get your running mate and leave Baumia alone. Zongo Boys, Job, Esiedun Ketia, NLA licenses 5 private lotto operators. On the front page of the Daily Dispatch newspaper, disqualification of some parliamentary candidates, Akufo-Addo likely to lose over 400,000 votes through apathy. And we talked to, within the close, towards the end of the last week, the Director of Elections of the Electoral Commission, Evans Nimaku, on this subject as well. We'll do more to get a lot of some of these interactions within the week as well. Ghana hailed as a global leader in coronavirus response. 2,208 Ghanaians to be evacuated later this month, and it's part of the response by the Foreign Affairs Ministry to a question that was asked by a Member of Parliament on the floor of the House or the plenary. And Gifty, you want to make a pick?
I do have 2 final newspapers, the Daily Statesman and then the Independent newspaper. The Daily Statesman has a picture of President Akufo-Addo at the commissioning of the Tema Interchange. NHIA consolidates its global appeal, innovates, builds partnerships, widens base. Okay, page 8 of that newspaper. And I'll pay back 15 million quote-unquote loot. Mahama appointee agrees with state in 42.8 stealing case. That's the Daily Statesman. It comes with a picture of Daniel Duku, ex-CEO of Venture Capital Fund. That story is on page 2. And on the back page of the Statesman, Anthony Joshua says racism is a pandemic at Black Lives Matter March. It is indeed a pandemic. Ronaldo becomes the first ever footballer to reach billionaire status. Nice one. And I tried to figure out what they have on the center spread of that newspaper so I can move on to the final one that I have. Okay, it's taking me a little bit of time. Maybe I should just skip it. Okay. Oh, it has the picture of the NHIS. A long story of the NHIS. You want to grab a copy and take a look at that. Finally, Roland, I have the Independent newspaper. Now, Independent newspaper reports about Ernesto Yeboah's bill. It says Ernesto Yeboah granted bail at last, but it comes with a picture that has been captioned Ernesto Yeboah. That is not Ernesto Yeboah. It is not. This, don't really know who, but it looks like the former IGP, and I'm wondering how a newspaper could get it that wrong. I mean, this is wrong. That's wrong photo.
They wanted to relay that story to maybe the police.
No, but this is no, he's no longer the IGP.
Yes,
either.
sure. I mean, they got it wrong.
Yeah.
So.
And it's captioned Ernesto Yeboah. I think that some of these mistakes, we shouldn't be seeing them in the newspaper.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. And then the banner has the banner story, banner headline is Imani boss attacks EC, says none of EC's argument on new voters register makes sense. And then it comes to the picture of Franklin Kujo. Atto Forson, who is a minority spokesperson on finance, says Parliament rather lied. Atto Forson and Akando charge. Then sports on the back page as well. Okay, they're also talking about racism at the back page of the Independent newspaper.
Story that has captured the mind of 15 everybody else.
Well,
but I wanted to comment on the story about the former Venture Capital Trust Fund boss who, according to what the stories are, has now entered into some level of restitution to the state to pay 50 million Ghana cedis to that state, to the state that we have. And it's because he, alongside 5 other individuals and 7 officers and even a former MP, are being taken through a court process. And it's all because of the way they handled affairs when they were in office. I am thinking we've had a number of court cases, a quality grain case. We've had a number of court actions taken against government officials, but more like former serving government officials. And I think this is not only one of the examples, should also serve as the example for current public serving officials?
I hope so. I hope so. Haven't you seen this cycle play out over and over again? Governments come, governments go. The thrust of the conversation many of the times for governance experts has been that often we don't find these prosecutions when we have appointees of the government of the day who may have done certain acts or omissions against the regulations of the offices that they hold. And I think that while this is serving as an example, 7 officers currently should also know that one day judgments will definitely come. I think I find this a very interesting cycle, Roland. It's an interesting vicious cycle that does all of us no good. So now what happens, what we've seen over the years is that government will come, they'll change, they'll go after the other, the members of the previous administration, and they'll say they're fighting corruption. The tables turn, and then we see the same thing play out. I'm really tired of it, and I hope that people will be just a little bit sincere and just a little bit truthful to their calling to leadership and just do the right thing. People just don't do the right thing, and someone has argued that it is inbuilt in the way we are brought up as, I don't know whether as Ghanaians, as Africans, as whatever, but that they feel that people just are not sincere, people are just not honest, and it plays out in leadership. And I hope that this cycle really stops. Like, you know, sometimes you just get definitely, that's the thrust of the conversation. It's that we need to have current serving public officials. And we're not talking only about current. I mean, if somebody serving in the present day has done wrong, has committed an omission, then that person needs to be taken to the court or to the appropriate bodies for that answers to be sought. The necessary sanctions. And also meted out. Let's jump on straight away and do myjoyonline.com. Okay. So what do we have on myjoyonline.com? Ernesto Yeboah. So the publishers of independent newspaper, that is Ernesto Yeboah right there at myjoyonline.com. Ernesto Yeboah opens up to Joy News about arrest during Black Lives Matter vigil. And that's our top story. Scroll down on that page for more of our stories there. Ghana records 294 new COVID-19 cases, 2 more deaths, and 90 recoveries. Those are the latest figures, adding to the previous ones that we had already. And then many churches in Oti region remain closed despite easing of COVID-19. Some churches in Accra as well. 41 stranded Ghanaians returned home. Leader of Economic Fighters League, Ernesto Yeboah, granted bail. Playback, Joy News' Beyond the Lockdown discussed impact of COVID-19. That story is there from last night. And Managing Director of Nyaho Medical Center test positive for COVID-19. I think on the back of that story, I heard that they're no longer doing the COVID-19 tests at Nyaho. But we wish him speedy recovery. People have recovered, so I believe that he will recover as well. Then there's a foreign minister story there. He's outlining government's plan for evacuating stranded Ghanaians abroad. Well, definitely. Make sure you get onto our page, myjoyonline.com, get to the various tabs and get all the best news you can have. But you can also check out our social media platforms. Joy News TV is always available for you on YouTube, and then you get all the relevant content each minute of the day. Now we have to bring you the latest sports headlines. Benedict Owusu is here with the latest. Do stay with us.
Hi there, time to talk sports here on AM Show. I'm Benedict Owusu. Thanks so much for your company this morning. Now, yesterday, over the weekend, we saw action in the German Bundesliga. Bayern Munich came from a goal down to win their game against Bayer Leverkusen, and Borussia Dortmund also won by a goal to nil, with a points difference still 7 between the two teams. We'll try and get highlights of that game for you, but we'll start here on the local scene and with continental issues. And as leagues begin to resume across parts of the world, the question is when continental and international competitions can be played, still lingers on. Now, Confederation of African Football Deputy Secretary in charge of football development, that's Tony Bafo, says every precaution must be taken to ensure player safety.
We have already created different scenarios, and of course also worst case scenarios. But don't forget, again, we are working in close collaboration with the WHO, and then also when we have better visibility in terms of when all the borders are going to open, when people can travel in a normal way, I think then the adequate organs, bodies, committees will then also take a decision according to the scenarios we provide.
So that's Tony Bafo. He is General Secretary in charge of football development at the Confederation of African Football. There will be more on that in our subsequent sports bulletins. But you still have to stay here on the local scene. And CEO of Databank Kujo at Diamonds, and who is also a sports fan, has been speaking about how clubs can generate money off the field, especially post-COVID-19.
If the game continues without contact, that's going to be a very difficult one. Because most of the model we have run is a contact model. The model we have used to run our football in Ghana and the source of income and everything is contact-based. We need to think of how we will earn revenue non-contact. You know, getting the game, maybe even getting people to subscribe through their phone while the game is going on. So that subscription money goes. So we have to start looking at how we can earn revenue non-contact. So in Europe, Premiership had gotten to the point where their main source of revenue was TV. It wasn't called Barclays Premiership anymore. Yes. The main source of revenue is now TV. Oh, that's the biggest. Next is sponsorships and kits and all that. They are buying it online now. Now you don't have to enter, I don't have to enter the Liverpool mega store to get my replica, to get my souvenir here. Everything is now non-contact. So post-COVID, or while we are at it, we need to think of how we will earn revenue non-contact. We will watch the game non-contact until such time that the contact model comes back, which in my mind, and if it's not herd immunity, then it must be a vaccine that will bring the old way back. And I don't see it happening in another year or two. So we have to go digital, non-contact way of doing it.
Right, so Youth and Sports Minister Isaac Isiama has underscored the importance of artificial pitches in the development of football talent in the country. There's more in this report.
Football has always been the passion of the nation, but for the sport to continue to flourish, there's the need for talent development. However, bad playing surfaces have hindered the progress of talent identification and development, especially at the grassroots level. Despite concerns over its use, many countries around the globe have built several artificial pitches in a bid to produce the next generation of football stars, and Ghana is no exception. Youth and Sports Minister Isaac Isiama has underscored the importance of AstroTurfs in the development of football talents in the country.
As soon as I was made a minister, there's this gentleman who has been so instrumental in Ghana sports. He doesn't want to be called Professor Usansa, but I call him Professor Usansa. He is here. He is my technical advisor. So then he gave him that technical advice that because of the climate we find ourselves and everything, even if we want to do AstroTurf, it should have some modifications, some specification, so that it can suit our circumstance. So I'm in touch with all those who are developing some of these facilities. Zongo Development Ministry, my brother Mustafa, I'm in touch with him, and other institutions that are engaged in that, so I can get the type that will suit our circumstance. But FAST is good for sports development.
Wembley Sports Construction, a Ghanaian-based company, is passionate about the country's vision of producing as many world football stars as possible, hence the construction of several AstroTurfs across the country. Robert Coleman is Chief Executive Officer of the company.
If you go to every constituency in this country, I can say without any ambiguity or equivocation that we have about not less than 50 pitches within communities that people play football on. So if you multiply 50 times the number of constituencies that we have, then you can irresistible parks that we have. Even in the interlands where we have abundance of rain, where grass does well, you will not be in a position to see an edifice like this. So you go around, and everywhere you go, you see people are excited that, look, you are bringing AstroTurf to them, because Sakura Parks, you know, injury and all that, and they are not happy when they see their colleagues playing football on very good pitches like this. So it is something that it is catching up, and everybody is excited about it.
The Medina AstroTurf is one of the projects of Wembley Sports Construction, and it is the only facility in West Africa constructed by an indigenous company, which has been approved by World Football Governing Body, FIFA.
So that was a Siberia Coast report. Now let's do some boxing, and Ghana's Wasiu Mohammed is leaving no stone unturned in his bid to win the WBO Super Bantamweight title. But before his claims the belt, he must first defeat Hoda Emmanuel Navarrete, while his trainer Daniel Latte says his boxer will be ready for the huge challenge.
Oh, you know, we have prepared very well. Like we wanted to fight Navarrete, but the coronavirus have choked our neck. Choking. So we are waiting. When the coronavirus just vanish, we will catch him wherever he is. Oh yeah, it's a very big dream. We want to return the title belt back to Ghana, because the title is with us. It's with Isaac Dogbe, and now he has just gone. So we want to bring it back. Yeah, we are going to revenge like a Chinese man. 10,000 years we will revenge. So we always focus on Navarrete. And those who are there, the WBC, WBA, IBF, everywhere we are there. We want to be there. If we are not fighting, then, you know, it's very disaster for us. We are waiting. Serious. I hope the one Navarrete is going to fight will be pulled out, then they give it to us. Anytime, every day, every hour, we are ready for him.
So that was Wasiu Mohammed's trainer Latekwe speaking there. You hear from him when he joined us, more from him when he joined us at 2 on Sports Today. But you know, over the weekend we saw action in the German Bundesliga, and of course Bayern Munich, as I made mention in my intro, came from a goal down to beat Bayer Leverkusen by 4-2. Borussia Dortmund also won their game. So there you go, full results of matches that were played over the weekend in the German Bundesliga. Mönchengladbach in their game against Freiburg lost a 0-0. Freiburg were playing at home. Leipzig drew 1-1 with SC Paderborn. And then we had Bayer Leverkusen, as I mentioned. Initially, they were leading in that game, but München came back to draw level and eventually won the game by 4-2. 2-0. It ended in a game between Mainz 05 and Frankfurt. And then Fortuna Düsseldorf, they were at home to Hoffenheim. They drew 2-1. Borussia Dortmund beat Hertha Berlin. And then Wolfsburg in their game against Werder Bremen won by a 0-0. Union Berlin drew 1-1 with Schalke, with Augsburg playing 1-1 with FC Cologne. So those were results of matches that were played in the German Bundesliga over the weekend. So let's check how the standings are after the round of matches that were played over the weekend. So Bayern Munich still lead the pack with 70 points, 7 points separating them, and second place Borussia Dortmund 63, and then 59 is Leipzig. Borussia Mönchengladbach also fourth with 56 points, and 56 points Bayer Leverkusen, they are fifth. Sixth is Wolfsburg. They also have 45 points, 43 points. To Hoffenheim, 7th position. 8th position is Freiburg, 41 points. Hertha Berlin are 9th with 38 points. Same points as Schalke 04, who are 10th on the table. Frankfurt are 11th with 35 points. Also on 35 points is Cologne. Augsburg, 13 points, 13th position with 32 points, and then Union Berlin are 14th with 32 points, and then 15th is Mainz 05 with 31 points. The last three on the table is Fortuna Düsseldorf, 28 points, 25 points is Werder Bremen, and then Paderborn, they are 18th with just 20 points. Chat there for you. Robert Lewandowski plays for Bayern Munich and he has 30 goals. And then Timo Werner, who is highly tipped to join Chelsea in the summer, 25 goals. He plays for Leipzig. Jadon Sancho recently scored a hat-trick, and by virtue of that he's jumped to 17 goals in there with Hennings of Fortuna Düsseldorf. Although his side is not playing quite well in the Bundesliga, but he's doing very well for himself. 14 goals in there. And then Wolfsburg player, that's Weghorst also with 12 goals. And on that note, we end Sports on AM show. I'm Benedict Osu. Thanks so much for your company. We are back at 2 on Sports Today with more sports. Until then, keep watching Joy News. The show continues after this short break. Don't go away.
And we'll have to run this by you. We have an interaction Kojo Jansen had with the leader or the convener of the Solidarity Vigil on the Black Lives Matter. And we do know that this has taken the whole world by storm. First, it was the United States of America following the death of the Black American in the hands of white police officers of George Floyd, and subsequently it swept through Europe, and now in Ghana, we do know that not only has it taken over social media, but there was an event subsequently, and he was picked up by the police and then given bail, and Kojo Jansen had that interaction. We'll bring that to you. But look, let's talk about what also has always been one of our focus areas. Even before the COVID-19, we're talking about our Arrive Alive campaign, and it's talking about safety on the road, and what a way for us to start, because we do know that the numbers had not been too good before the lockdown period, and subsequently, even though we've had the slow movement of vehicles on our roads, it's still not the best of times, and we have to have a forward look to the rest of the half year that we have for 2020. And we're going to have a great conversation with the head of communications, the National Road Safety Authority, and then Kwame Kodio-Etua will also be joined by Superintendent Alex Obeng, who is head education research and training. Well, so let's have on stream Superintendent Alex Obeng, who is with the Department for Education, or Director for Education, Research and Training, the Police MTTD. He's on phone. Good morning to you, sir.
Roland.
Yeah, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm fine.
Okay, great. I'm good. I hope you had a great weekend. But straight away, let's just get into the mainstream of the conversation. How would you describe the road safety situation for at least the first 5 months of 2020?
All right. Thank you very much. And good morning to viewers and then colleagues who are on the other side. I think generally I would say that we haven't done much as a country when it comes to road safety in terms of ameliorating or reducing crashes and associated deaths, injuries and damage, given that just after 12 March, the social distance and the lockdown impact would have restricted many from using the road, and therefore would have expected lesser crashes, deaths and injuries. However, it looks as if that is not the case. That we also, from January, Dumpase, and then later the following month, the Kintampo Babatukuma crashes that claim multiples of deaths. We were expecting that should have slowed down. However, this COVID, though we have fewer as compared to the beginning of the year, fewer interaction on the road, but that theory has been confirmed that where the roads are free, straight and flat, you need to see crashes, and the crashes also contribute to the surge, and that is what we are seeing. Though in the lockdown and this social distance period, we have some of the road users still at home, particularly schools are not in session, among others, and therefore on normal rush hour periods in big cities in Ghana, the objection is minimal. However, because rules are free, the discipline is still surging, and we have seen a surge in weekly crashes. For example, the past 3 weeks, we have seen the sparks from 21 per week to 47, 40, hovering around 50 per week. And therefore, you see that the data shows clearly that the trajectory that we started with the beginning of the year is what we are still experiencing in terms of deaths, injuries, and damage. So, and the onslaught is led by, when it comes to death, by motorcycle related victims, and that is also worrying in times like this, when, for example, we see that there is a complete change and there is new normal when it comes to movement. However, associated behavior and impact on crashes, deaths, injury, and damage hasn't changed much, and that is what I can say.
Why have we seen the phenomenon in which, from March, let's say just after the first week of March, we had the lockdown? The expectation is that for those who are doing the monitoring, you will see less occurrence of incidents, and indeed there were less movement of people, but then we had crashes that occasion for some of the losses. Why do we have such a phenomenon?
Yeah, first of all, when you look at it, we had a little gain when we had a lockdown from, let's say, 1st April to 21st. But then you will see that even within the lockdown, the first week, yes, it reduced weekly fatalities from 50, 52 to 20, 21. Immediately we got adjusted to the situation as road users. We didn't see the data that began to rise. And since then, we are gravitating towards where we were before COVID. And so I think that it still stands that our behavior, when we look at data, when it comes to use of the vehicle, particularly regarding maintenance, movement violations in terms of speeding behavior, and the kind of other indiscipline that are inhibiting the system, i.e. driver related indiscipline or violations, and has to do with road user, whether pedestrian related indiscipline, and when you talk about, in this day and age, motorcycle. You see, Roland, motorcycle, it may be one there, and sometimes I like the way Mr. Tuahin talks about one here, one there, comes together and it becomes many. And motorcycles, if you look at the data, though commercial vehicles and private vehicles, they contribute to a crash and death. Let's say 100, the two combined may contribute to, let's say, about 40, 60. And in terms of vehicle, you realize that the commercial and the private may be many, but the fewer the motorcycle that will crash may kill 60. And that is what we are seeing. Therefore, there's a shift in the discourse. It should at this time be very critical for us when we also focus more of our energy as we discuss the use of unsafe use of motorcycle, and the fact that if as a country we think that motorcycle is going to assist us, the data shows clearly that it is so dangerous a mode, and few crashes that are associated with motorcycle are killing many. If you look at 100 deaths, for example, and therefore motorcycle hasn't helped us at all in this period of COVID. It has killed more than private and commercial vehicle combined within the data, weekly, daily, monthly, among others. And so, as we discussed, we should also be focusing on motorcycles. They become easy mode. It's everywhere, and it's killing by day and by hour. One day, 2 here, 1 day, 1 year, and that is, when you add up, it is more dangerous and it's worrying. And I think that in all these, we should also be focusing seriously, because there is a novel what you call crash machine on the block, which is motorcycle, and it is happening across the country, and it doesn't matter whether it is urbanized jurisdiction or a rural setting. It is everywhere, and it is endangering lives. And I think that is with what I have on my desk. That is what I see.
Yeah. All right. So it's where we also have to bring you to the studio. We do have Kwame Echiahene. He is head of regulations, inspection, and also compliance at the National Road Safety Authority. He's a lawyer by training and practice, and so has a lot to say about regulations and how compliance have been over the period. And thank you for joining me, Kwame.
Thanks for having me, Ronan.
But in relation, or as a complement to what Superintendent Alex Obeng has indicated, it will mean that while we're not having indeed regular crashes of commercial vehicles or the private ones that we have, the localized incidents of the use of motorcycles become integral to this. We do know what the regulation says, that it's not supposed to be used in the manner in which it's being used. What's the authority's own position on the subject?
Well, thank you, and good morning to your viewers. I think that the position is very clear. If you look at the law, in spite of current discussions as to whether the use of bicycles should be allowed for commercial purposes or not, the law is clear on the matter, that it should not be allowed for commercial purposes. And more so worrying is a situation that during the COVID lockdown restrictions, I think that at some point in time there were directives that given the difficulty in observing social distancing as far as the use of motorcycles are concerned, they were not expected as much in the traffic environment. And some assemblies had gone a step further to ban their use within
the jurisdiction.
Within their jurisdiction and within the period, which restrictions are yet to be relaxed in some of those areas. So that's where we are. I mean, it goes down to emphasize the sheer level of a discipline that we've had to contend with, especially with users of motorcycle. Even though the data does not show clearly that these cyclists or motorcyclists, for want of a better word, are doing so for commercial purposes. I mean, the evidence we pick up from the streets in areas where these services are predominant show that that is the case. So when you get into the data, in as much as you have capture for commercial vehicles, because it's an illegal undertaking, the data does not capture Okada, as it were. However, I mean, it is also obvious from our own observation that part of the problems we have in that space is because of that situation. What we have done is to work with the Ministry of Transport. I think for most part of last year, before the COVID restrictions, a team was asked to go around the country to take views on the matter. Even though we acknowledge these constraints and the current law, the reality also is that in some parts of the country, there are genuine transportation constraints, which is to say that without the use of motorcycles somehow for commercial purposes, transportation needs will be close to zero. So views have been taken, and the ministry, which is the supervisory ministry as far as these matters are concerned, have some options to look at, and I'm trusting that in the coming days or weeks, the ministry will take a definite position.
What's the position? Because you picked up opinions, and per the position based on the opinion that the authority has picked, it looks like the citizenry would need it, but we have the law as well.
Yeah, at present the law hasn't changed. The ministry would have to take a position as to whether it wants to vary the law or keep it as it is and rather strengthen the enforcement modalities. I'm told that the police, for instance, is looking at creating a unit that will assist to deal with these motorcycle incidents within the MTTD establishment. That will be welcoming, because whether they are allowed into the space or not, it is a transportation mode, and we must find a way to enforce infractions that may come from these users. Otherwise, I could say that the options are fairly about 3 or so, but the ministry will have to take a decision on either of them. The first option is to keep the status quo and allow for a complete ban. I mean, the law says you can use motorcycles for what do you call it, for deliveries and for private use, but for fare and reward, no, you can't use them for carriage of passengers. That's the current law at present. The other option is to say that let us look at the practice in other jurisdictions where motorcycles, the use of motorcycles for commercial purposes are regulated to get these operators into some form of cooperative and find a way to exercise some control.
And the best practices are in which of the jurisdictions in the sub-region?
I think in Rwanda, about 2 years ago, a team went to Rwanda to look at the way they use these motorbicycles in that jurisdiction. But again, it's sounding a word of caution. Is the fact that it works perfectly in Rwanda offers no assurances that it will work in Ghana, because the level of discipline in Rwanda, I want to imagine, is not as same as our attitude in this country. So we must be cautious in trying to import holistically what seems to have worked elsewhere. The other option is to look at how to marry the two situations, because as I said, there are places or jurisdictions in this country where if you cut out motorcycles, you're saying that there should be no movement. So the ministry will look at these options and have advice on the way forward.
Superintendent Alex Obeng, what do you say? I know what the position of the law is, being reiterated. And once you go around, you go and pick opinion, it also means that the police should have a position. What's the likely future position of the police MTTD?
All right, thank you very much. I think the position of traffic police everywhere in the world is always the position of the state. That the state policy that is formulated into a regulation or a rule law. And Kwame rightly pointed to that. The regulation 128 among others. And it's because of the challenges that as a country we are facing in terms of the new found taste for the use of motorcycle other than for private, which is being used everywhere in the country. And in certain instances, you take a step back and feel that, in quote, it is justified. It is the reason why we have been back and forth. And I'm not surprised that the state has taken a position to do an in-depth study of it and to probably come up with a gamut of solution basket, which will, in a way, also bring a paradigm shift in traffic policing. And basically, as stakeholders, we are all working on it because the problem is obvious, and this is every per hour. and it is a serious challenge for us. However, we are not sitting aloof, and we're doing our best with our SUS, among other, particularly in urban rural settings during rush hour and morning and evening and during the day, particularly in the CBDs and all that, regarding registration, licensing, and moving violations, including running amber lights, red lights, and then all others. And however, I must admit that it is very challenging as a result of particularly in the peri-urban Accra and Kumasi and all areas. And it is where we are here, how far we've come with this. And that's why, to a very large extent, the department is in support of all stakeholders to do an in-depth study to come up with very pragmatic solution to this emerging but worrying trend of how these motorcycles are impacting on life. So we continue to do our best under the circumstances. However, I think that a gamut of solution will assist other than deploying only traffic police to look out there and arrest. We need others to support, particularly when you look at the discourse, what we call landscape. A lot are suggesting that, for example, there should be improvement in our traffic system. There should be improvement in our commercial transport system. And then the public service vehicles, particularly commercial, should be extended to other areas to support. And dedicated lanes should be done for motorcycles when it comes to urban settings, when new roads are being constructed. Among other, suggestions that I think that when it is implemented now and over time will assist. But that will not also prevent us from continuing with our effort in looking out for motorcycle-related violations and either deterring, arresting, and prosecuting at the motor courts.
And Mr. Chahine, if you take a look at the 2019 figure, we had in total the vehicles 18% rise, and then you look at the injuries and the subsequent fatalities, about 3.4% rise from the 2018 figure if you get a record of 2019. You look at jurisdictions in the sub-region, Benin, Togo, Nigeria. I would say Benin and Togo, they are more regulated, especially in Benin. And even in India, until their development, and China now, it was a mainstay of transport. How can we do the marrying of the two, which is the last of the three options that now faces the ministry, and you haven't collated that, to see that we can do the integration?
Yeah, so we need to look at, I always say that in trying to develop any piece of legislation looking forward, you want to look at best practice also, but also look at your socio-cultural circumstances. Even in Ghana, if you went to the three northern regions, Tamale, the former three northern regions, Tamale, Bogawa, I tell you, motor riders are very law-abiding. They drive to the traffic light, it turns red, they stop, wait for other users to navigate, move on. The problems you may observe there is the use of crash helmets. Even that, we're beginning to see some level of improvement. If we're to look at the data very well, it will become very obvious that in other urbanized environments, in Accra, in Kumasi, Takrade, where for one reason or the other, even in these areas where there appear not to be transportation constraints, we have found a way to allow for the use of motorcycles, but somehow the riders don't obey the traffic infractions, the traffic regulations. So they get to the traffic lights and they behave as though they are not part of the traffic. And many of the instances we've recorded, even when you look at the pedestrian deaths, is as a result of these riders failing to obey these traffic regulations. When the light turns red, it turns green for a pedestrian. And when the pedestrian is using the road, there's always this conflict and collision. If you went to 37, for instance, there's been a number of cases where relatives have gone to visit their colleagues, patients. And just when they have left the hospital, at the 37 intersection, they get knocked down by motorcycles and get back to the hospital. So, in as much as we want to look at a review of the current law, to see whether we could vary to accommodate and allow for the use of these cycles commercially in very restricted jurisdictions or areas within our country if the law allows. Bottom line is that riders must also begin to appreciate that they are part of the traffic environment and there are no different rules for them. All rules that are related to drivers also apply to them. And once we begin to do so, use the necessary personal protective equipment, abide by the law, we'll be good to go. So we are here because riders are indisciplined. Otherwise, the law does not say that we should not use motorcycles. It says if you're a private rider, you can put on your protective apparel, obey the law. Why not? So if they are doing so, why not extend the same protocols to those who want to use it for commercial purposes if that is allowed? But we had looked at, again, in coming to the current position of the law, we had done a certain study, which I know you are privy to, and tried to look at the examples from within the West African sub-region. And I'll tell you, our colleagues from Nigeria and even Benin and the rest of them, prior to 2012, forewarned that given our own experiences, if you have the opportunity, do not allow the use of motorcycles for commercial purposes on the evidence of what we have seen.
But now it's gone out of hands.
Yes, because with all due respect, I think that we haven't done as much in the area of enforcing the law as far as these bicycles are concerned. I agree with my colleague Obeying that when you speak to the police, they say they have some constraints as far as dealing with these recalcitrant motor riders. However, I mean, that's why they are there. You want to believe that in spite of the constraints, we all assist to engineer a very robust means of enforcing the law against these specialized road users. And I think that's what the police is seeking to do.
Superintendent Obeying, it will mean that your men, your department, has been weak when it comes to the enforcement.
Oh, I think it's the reason why we are discussing this, because over time we have been taken by events as a result of overwhelming numbers of the use of motorcycle and the fact that within the motorcycle space, the country, we haven't done much. Though the law is there, people can own motorcycle and people can even ride, and even those who recently that I think efforts are even being made to regulate them in terms of training the rider, potential rider who's 18 and want to ride, learning how to ride and be licensed and all that. And that is part of regulation. And I said earlier that you make a law to prohibit a motorcycle not to be used for commercial. But it is obvious across the country. And unless we all want to pretend that that regulation is not being complied with. And people are using motorcycle for commercial purpose.
Yeah, it's not being complied with because your department has not been enforcing it adequately.
What I'm saying is that because the system has made it so, and I'm not surprised that studies are ongoing, because all of us were using it for private, and all of us, all of a sudden, across the country, Ghanaians have found new taste for using motorcycles, I said it, for commercial, and particularly not only for dispatch, but for carrying fare-paying passengers. And it's not registered so for that, and also sometimes difficult for you to know which one is private, which one is commercial, and therefore there's lacuna. And that is why I'm happy that studies are ongoing, so that if these things are not resolved within the policy and then the regulation, it will be difficult for any policing entity to enforce motorcycle regulation, because it is now everywhere. People are using it, either buying it or freely patronizing it, as Ghanaians who know that the law is there but go and stand and or in their home they call and they sit on it. How would you, for example, know that that motorcycle coming is the person behind it is a fair paying person? And these are challenges that comes with it. And no wonder elsewhere in other jurisdictions they have established institutions that target motorcycle riders for commercial or private, train them, license them, clothe them, give them access, and set up institutions to monitor, regulate on daily basis. And therefore, we come back to the issue of, for example, commercial transport operation services and all that. Everybody is doing whatever he likes in terms of motorcycle. And it's the same thing that's happening in the other formal sector. And therefore, we need to resolve some of these things. Otherwise, the impact will always be what we are seeing, that the traffic police will be overwhelmed, and then we turn around and be trying to find solace in the traffic police, because in the system there are already inhibitions that make it difficult for the motorcycle policy and regulation to be enforced and implemented. And therefore, let's broaden this discussion to this area, that now it is with us, it is overwhelming, it is everywhere, and people are using it for both private and commercial. Sometimes difficult to get the commercial, but there is a way to resolve it. Learning from other jurisdictions do that. Like I said, so far as we are concerned, we will do SUS. We look out for those who are not wearing helmets. We look out for those who don't have license, insurance, and among others. But sometimes, how do you, for example, enforce on those who are using for commercial? I know that immediately commercial interest comes in, the equation changes, and that's why in every road law, I attempt to make regulation to regulate commercial interest on the road. And in Ghana, motorcycle is obviously being used everywhere for commercial, but there is no regulations for them because we think that they have been prohibited. But we are also patronizing as people.
Are you then saying that because they are with us, then the policy should make considerations for that?
No consideration. We should look at it holistically. Analysis have been done, findings have been done, that we make a new policy that will allow for new ways of regulating. And I said that, for example, I will not hesitate, and I'll be very happy if the state set up a dedicated unit, for example, at the DVLA, that will only train motorcycle for commercial and how transport service that relate to motorcycle, for example, if we go moving forward, it's established to allow those who are using it to be regulated, know them, clothe them, give them a new color on their motorcycle, give them routes to operate, and for us to monitor, know that these are transport operators that are operating like it elsewhere. And until then, it is, like I said, everybody is doing what, and it is difficult to monitor to know who it is sometimes difficult and where it is sometimes difficult and all that. So for me, we need to look at all, because traffic policing is not only deploying police officers to stand on the road to detect, but it's also other systems that are put in place in terms of entry and in terms of operation. And this can be done when you look at it holistically and resolve. Otherwise, with the current traffic policing methods on the use of motorcycles, we wouldn't benefit it that much looking at what is happening. And therefore we need a shift.
Mr. Chahine, you look at, we should look at the situation, behavior, acceptability, use, and then construction, engineering, and policy. So it means that somehow it's here to stay. If that is it, then we come to the last option of marrying. In what ways can we fashion out the best means by which we do regulation? He has said that we need a department or an outfit within their establishment that could give the goodwill to those who want to use it to come forward to say, look, we want to use it, we want to do the licensing, and we'll come back to renew, etc.
Yeah, so here to stay, I think that it's an illegality.
Based on current law?
Yes, based on current law. And if we want to regularize or legalize, then the conditions must be suited for it. For instance, as DSP Superintendent Obey indicated, today, if you went to DVLA, even though they have records of driving schools that have been registered to train persons who are interested to drive in the whole of Ghana, I shudder to say that, but for one institution that was set up a couple of years ago in Wa, there is absolutely no driving school that has taken up the burden of training motor riders. So most of the people you find riding, except for a few who, by some arrangement in the past, defer to some specialized training opportunities by the police. Most of them ride on, they learn the skill on their own. And that's part of the problem. If you are learning to ride on your own, you see how risky it is to get into the road environment, especially with the type of vehicle in issue. Then it's problematic. So if we are taking a decision, for instance, that we want to allow for their use and also regulate them, these are the sort of considerations that we must reflect on. And also the training, apart from the training, in what ways can we regulate them so that you can have to deal with some institutional arrangement where you can also allow for some institutional controls. If all of that are in place, and there's a likelihood that their regulation will lead to an improvement, why not? But in doing so and in getting to that stage, we must try to reflect on the current state of the law and do the best we can to enforce the law at present, because the figures show that there's a need for us to do one thing or the other. And that's what we urge on all of us, whilst we hope that the ministry will take immediate steps to resolve the matter one way or the other.
Well, that's what we have to bring the discussion to a close. We thank you for your presence right here in the studio and also online. Superintendent Alex Obeng, Head Education, Research and Training of the Police MTTD, thank you for joining us on the phone as well. We wish you a good morning. And then you also, Kwame Kudia Ichiahene, Head of Regulations, Inspection and Compliance at the National Road Safety Authority. I wish you a blessed day.
Thank you very much.
But the summary of the subject is that, well, within the period of the lockdown, we saw a reduction in the numbers of the crashes, but then, well, the motorcycles, they just wouldn't stop crashing. Because if we take a look at the 2019 figure, there was an increase in terms of the numbers of these motorcycles that were involved in accidents, 18.75%. Then we also have the fatalities and the injuries being an increment over 2018. For 2019, 3.4%. All right, that's where we have to take a break. And when we come back again, we'll tell you about that interaction that Kojo Yankson had with Ernesto Yeboah. You all remember he's the convener of that vigil. That is the solidarity event for the Black Lives Matter movement. That started with the death of George Floyd in the US, subsequently swept through the UK or Europe, and then we've had the respective countries in Africa also solidarizing as well. We'll bring you that interaction next. Do stay with us.
It's Sunday night. It's late. And I'm somewhere in Accra. I'm here to interview a man who spent last night in police custody. But before that, let me tell you a story. On Saturday evening, a group of Ghanaians gathered at the Independence Arch to celebrate the life of George Floyd, the African-American who was killed by police. To celebrate his life in a vigil. Soon after they arrived at the Independence Arch, the police arrived too. They insisted that this gathering was unlawful and proceeded to arrest their leader. The group started to agitate for the release of this leader. Amidst their chants, we all saw what ensued next in the videos that are on social media.
Istanbul, we have the notice of demonstration which we presented to them on the first of this month.
So right now the police is arresting him, the leader of the protest in Ghana. Is being arrested by Ghana police right now. The Ghana police is arresting him for fighting for Black lives. Stop arresting us! Stop! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! This is what's happening in Africa! Oh my God! 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 Oh my God!
Ernesto Yeboah is the leader who was arrested last night and spent the night in police custody. It's been about 24 hours since that arrest, and he now agrees to speak to us about his ordeal. Ernesto, thank you.
Welcome, Kwejo.
How are you feeling?
Well, I'm okay. I'm all right.
I've got to say, normally you are a rather mild-mannered gentleman, but I see how you come alive in the middle of a demonstration. When there's a fight, it seems you come alive.
Absolutely.
The Economic Fighters League, that's your organization, that's the organization that arranged the vigil last night. Already I'm seeing on social media lots and lots of condemnation of your actions. Tell us, why did you decide to take up this fight in the name of George Floyd?
Okay, many thanks and greetings to all your wonderful viewers and listeners. One of the things that we considered keenly in jumping onto this Black Lives Matter issue had to do with the fact that we also looked at our own conditions, reflected on our own situation. Talk about the likes of Ahmed Swale, your colleague journalist, who was shot and killed in this country. And yet, to date, not a single report or investigative, document out on who is involved.
Ernesto, I know you normally to be a rather mild-mannered gentleman, but when there's a fight, it seems you come alive. Tell me about that. I mean, the Economic Fighters League, that's your organization. You organized this vigil. Why, though? Why did you care about this George Floyd issue?
Well, thank you very much, Kwejo. I think we, upon reflection, realized that we share many similarities with our brothers and sisters in America whose lives are under constant threat and who are killed with impunity and all of that. Because we look back in our own country and we have the likes of Ahmed Swale, your own colleague, journalist, who was shot and killed in broad daylight, and yet no investigative reports out there from the police or any official quarters. You have the likes of Eric Ofochu, who was shot and killed by a military armed officer who was there to protect him, ironically. We have the Tardy girls. I mean, so all of these reflections brought us to that conclusion that we cannot sit aloof and not add our voice or not see the linkage when our black brothers and sisters are racially abused and maltreated in China, in Europe, in the United States of America, it will be foolhardy of us to think that this black skin would be respected simply because it is coming from Africa and not from the United States of America. So this is one of the few reflections that we did to arrive at that conclusion.
Now, when I think of the name Economic Fighters League, I don't immediately think of issues like this. I think of economics.
Yeah.
You know, I think of issues to do with the economy and economics of being Ghanaian. So, is this part of your mandate? What exactly is the mandate of the Economic Fighters League? What are you about?
Absolutely. There's been an attempt over the years to take economics out of the streets understanding that people should actually have of economics. Economics is about us, it's about our survival. So if you can't survive in terms of where the next food is going to come from, where your shelter is going to be, and basic things like that, then you are not economically free. But we would often play it up there into the GDPs, per capita income, and all the blah, blah, blah. That loses its meaning and essence for ordinary people. So what we are doing is to bring the meaning back to the people, that when we say economics, it's actually about you, it's about your life, it's about your well-being, it's about whether you are surviving or you are dying.
You are a league of economic fighters.
Absolutely.
Who are you fighting?
We are fighting for the people, we are fighting for ourselves. We are fighting a system. And the reason why we find it important to, as it were, fight a system and to dismantle it is to be able to create opportunities for all of us. We do not want to focus energies fighting personalities. Because personalities, yes, may have their own idiosyncrasies and all of that. That's not what we are looking at. We are looking at the system and how it is structured. And currently the system as we have here in Ghana is one that is structured to, as it were, serve the inordinate needs and wants or luxuries of the few, as opposed to the necessities of all. So this is a systemic structure we are trying to dismantle.
So the system decided that what you and your comrades were doing on Saturday night was unlawful. So they swooped down and arrested you. First of all, were you there lawfully? Had you gone through the correct processes in order for such a gathering to happen, especially in these COVID-19 times?
Absolutely, Kwejo. And two most important considerations we made were on the EI 64 and then the Public Order Act. And as you are already aware, I mean, this is not the first time we are seeking to organize an event like that, which demands a notification to the police. And so we did all of that. We notified the police 6 days, even though the Constitution states 5 days. So we gave them 6 clear day notice, hoping to hear from them if they had any reservations with our planned activity. We did not hear from them. But I'm a bit surprised. I mean, the posture that the police or the state appears to be taking, especially given that it has a precedent that once upon a time went to the Supreme Court, I mean, together with the MPP, and secured a ruling against, I mean, the IGP, or more or less, I mean, an interpretation of sort that you did not need the permission of the police to demonstrate. All you needed was to notify the police and you are good to go. So to be told that our assemblage was unlawful, came to me with, quite a, it was a surprise to me.
Now, we've seen on social media a letter dated the 1st of June, written by the Economic Fighters League, notifying the police. Who did you submit this letter to?
Well, the letter was submitted to the IGP's office, and then the Minister of Interior was copied. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was also copied.
Do you know the specific individuals who took receipt of these letters in the various departments?
I am unable to say.
Right. Because that same
But the police have actually confirmed receipt of
your letter?
Of the notice. There have been some public proclamations to that effect by the police themselves.
That same day, the police also wrote a letter stating that they had heard of your gathering and they discouraged the open invitation because of the directives from the president contained in the executive instrument regarding public gatherings. So they wrote specifically to address that, saying that they didn't want to encourage people to attend this event because they were not aware of it.
No, that wasn't a letter they were addressing. I think that is in respect to a faceless public notice that was issued that all black people should gather at the Kwame Nkrumah Circle and march to the American Embassy. I think that's the letter I read from the police PRO, Efia Tingi,
right.
Discouraging the public, about such, how do you call it, gatherings. Beyond that, we formally, issued the police with a notification of our planned event, which is a vigil. It's supposed to be very peaceful, and even the way everything was organized, we had our ushers on standby. Nobody could enter the space if he or she had not been hand sanitized. If you didn't have a mask, we actually went out of our way to give you one. So all of these were done. It was supposed to be a very solemn, introspective, evening where black people in Ghana, people of all African, origins in this country have assembled to, as it were, do some introspection, some reflection, and then maybe say a prayer or two, and then say with one voice that black lives indeed matters. Whilst that is going on, we intended to be projecting on the walls. We would show that of Floyd, but then we would also show the faces of other black people whose lives, had been taken with, similar impunity and injustice as was seen in that of Floyd. So this was all that we were, doing, and we explained everything in that letter to the police. That's why we are quite surprised, how they have reacted in
Now, the president's executive instrument, and in fact the directives that he announced when he lifted some of the restrictions in his last address, he actually said that political activities, including demonstrations and so forth, could go on as long as there were less than 100 people present.
Absolutely.
Did you have less than 100 people present at your vigil?
Well, we did. As you may have seen in the footages, we're not more than 60. And so that in itself should give you the nature of our planning and how we intended to. And Besides, I mean, it's an open space, it's a huge space. So even if we're going to be more than 100, and we're not, even if we're going to be more than 100, well-trained ushers were going to ensure that the protocols were still observed, I mean, in that regard. So we're even, I mean, prepared for the worst, I mean, if you put it. But thankfully, it was just a few number of people, numbering less than 60.
How can you guarantee social distancing at a vigil? How were your ushers going to ensure that people stay at least 6 feet apart from each other, including they themselves, the ushers, from the people they are trying to usher?
Absolutely, and I get it. And you would see in some of the videos how the people who had come to vigil were socially distant, and it took our ushers to be telling the police to respect the COVID-19, I mean, protocols. So if there was any group of people with a misunderstanding in observing these protocols, it wasn't us, it was the police, it was the army, it was the officials who had come with the intention of dislodging a lawful assemblage, because our assemblage was lawful.
Tell us about your arrest.
Well, I was kidnapped from the space. I mean, I say kidnapped.
Why do you say kidnapped?
Because there was no warrant of arrest. There was no reason for my being taken away. So, I mean, it starts from there.
Were your rights read to you? Your Miranda rights?
There was nothing. They simply asked, who is the leader of the Economic Fighters League? I said, it's me. They said, okay, we need you at the ministry's police station. And of course, I mean, this is a program we have committed so much effort, so much time. I mean, if you checked Twitter, I mean, we're #1 on Twitter almost the whole day. So we didn't want to mar, I mean, the event for the importance that the country was according it. And therefore, I felt, okay, I mean, if the police wants me, I mean, I would rather go than have this event destroyed or disrupted. So I joined them to the ministry's police station. And then in about 30 minutes time, I was relocated to the Accra, the district police station opposite the Cocoa Board. So that's where I was taken to. Now, I wouldn't even talk about the inhuman or disparaging conditions that the police officers themselves, I mean, work under, and then the cell conditions and all of that. But then I was welcomed to sit on a bench behind the counter, what they call the counter back. And as I sat, I mean, the police were very civil. I mean, I must confess, they were very civil. We had very interesting conversations, as well as that with the cellmates, I mean, who were also there.
What did you talk about?
Generally about the system, and about how to improve things in the country and all of that. But what I also found very interesting was the fact that they themselves didn't know why, or they didn't tell me why I had been brought there. So I was asking, why have I been brought here? They're like, Master say, I mean, instructions from above says, I mean, that kind of. So we left that terrain and then started engaging on a very different end.
So how long were you in police custody?
I was there for about 14 hours. And all these time that I sat. Nobody, told me what offense or what has brought me there. Nobody would, come to interrogate me over anything.
So you were not questioned?
I wasn't questioned. It was just this morning, somewhere around 10, that some charges were placed, including the fact that they said I didn't notify the police, which is false, and that the EI 64 protocols or stipulations were also not followed. As to exactly which stipulations were not followed, they wouldn't say. So I gave my statement in the presence of my counsel. In fact, there are two of them, lawyer Xavier Sosu and lawyer Francis Onton. So I gave my statement, and then a bail was sought.
So you were charged?
I was charged.
With what?
With, the two offenses. And then bailed with a surety of 100,000 Ghana cedis.
So that night, the whole night that you were in police custody, they didn't question you?
No.
They didn't charge you till the following morning?
Yes.
Did you sleep?
No, I didn't. And it was quite interesting for me, as I sat there, because it was such an engaging moment for me between myself and the cellmates, asking them about what has brought them there and a number of things. One of the things that came very strong for me was the heightened injustice that they felt. Some of them had already been granted bail by the courts and were still being held by the police, and they spoke against it with, passion. Some were also telling me about how economic injustice forced them to commit crime. And there was this guy who was telling me he stole 1,000 Ghana cedis, and he's been there for close to 6 years.
6
nights? 6 years.
6 years?
Exactly.
In that cell?
In that cell.
At that police station?
At that police station.
Has he been to court?
Well, he doesn't say. But then I told him that once I'm out of the place, I'll come back to follow on.
Do you feel that you've been a victim of police brutality?
Well, I wouldn't personalize it. I think this is the story of everyday people in our country. And as I listened to my colleague cellmates, I noticed that something has to be done. But many of them feel inhibited from doing that because of a lack of education or just a little of it. And those of us who equally have education also maybe lack the confidence or the other, accompanying environments that could make us fight for, justice in our society. So I told them that we needed to team up in order to bring this unjust system down and resurrect a new one that would cater for the needs of all and not just a few.
So now you intend to take down the system. Tell me about that. What exactly do you mean?
Well, we intend to do that by politically educating our people. And I'm sure you, being the media man that you are, and with all the experience you have, know the height of polarism that the nation faces. Almost every issue that comes up has to take either sides of the pendulum, or else it is not worth discussing. Now, our job is to organize the education process such that people begin to understand that when you say politics, it's not just MPP, NDC. Politics is about you, it's about survival, it's about your well-being. So they can talk all they want. If at the end of the day you are still struggling to meet ends meet, you are unable to cater for your health needs and stuff like that, then you need to be able to say it as it is to those whose duty it is to make you comfortable. So this is that type of political education that hasn't accompanied the 1992 Constitution that promised economic freedom, in our lifetime.
After you were arrested, the other members of your group clashed with the police. Tell me about, you were not there clearly, but tell me, since your release, what have you learned of that?
Well, I don't know of a clash. What I know was is an assault and an attempt by the police to intimidate and to use open firearms on an unarmed crowd of people who were simply seeking to seek my freedom.
Are you saying the police opened fire on the crowd?
Yes, the police did. They, fired some, gunshots. I don't know where it went, but thankfully nobody was injured, nobody was hurt. And I feel it was unnecessary. It's also quite an irony that at the time we are protesting injustice, especially ones being committed by the institutions of states such as the police, as we've seen in the United States. It's a police officer who committed that dastardly act. And then we see it right here, playing out in our faces. So what yesterday brought about was the fact that black lives don't matter in this country. And it is only we, the people, who can make it matter.
But we're almost all blacks in this country, so if black lives don't matter, whose life matters?
It would look as though the political class have barricaded themselves from the injustices that ordinary black people, face. And that's why it was interesting that the height of the pandemic all over the world, COVID-19 and all of that, messages that kept coming was the fact that if it happened just here in Ghana and it wasn't the case in America or in Europe, these leaders would have abandoned us and gone to these countries to seek medical care or stuff like that. But once the whole world was contained, they had to be here. And even that, you see what they did. They converted certain abandoned hospitals and spaces as exclusive spaces for their well-being and treatment when it comes to their health. So we see that more and more the political class in this country, comprising the pendulum, do not really feel other lives apart from theirs and their family members matters. And that is why black lives actually matters.
Now, as a leader of this group, we've seen some of the images of some of your group members. One of them had a slash to the elbow and so forth. As a result of this Saturday night event, as a leader of this group, how does that make you feel?
Well, it breaks my heart that we organize an event that is meant to be peaceful, and then from nowhere, those we expected would maintain that peace, would rather come and cause so much commotion to disrupt the event and to endanger the very people who had converged to vigil. So it's unfortunate. We've met some of the victims, and they are undergoing care. We hope that it doesn't escalate, and we want to assure the general public that our events are not always like this. When we organized the blood donation to save our pregnant mothers at the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital, I mean, it wasn't violent. Nobody came to disrupt that event. In this COVID-19 season, when we went out to the community to distribute food to the poor and vulnerable, the police were not there to cause mayhem. So we want to assure them that we're a peaceful organization, we're a non-violent organization, we don't believe in violence. What the police did is condemnable, and that is why we must all stick up our voices and our necks in condemning them, I mean, openly and unequivocally, because it shouldn't repeat itself. We've come too long a way to be seeing some of these things, I mean, replicate or come up in our headlines and all of that. We have left that primitive era. I think we're in the 21st century, and it must reflect on us.
How many of the attendees were injured?
So far we know of about 2. If there were any other, it hasn't come to my notice yet. But we are still in it. So whatever happens, I mean, I'm sure we would be able to respond to the situation appropriately.
Assemble. We have the notice of demonstration which we presented to them on the panel of this.
So right now the police is arresting him, the leader of the protest in Ghana. Is being arrested by Ghana police right now. The Ghana police is arresting him for fighting for Black lives. Stop arresting us! Stop! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! This is what's happening in Africa! Oh my God! 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 Oh my God!
And did this indeed happen? It did happen. And at the point in time, we also do know that there are related issues that we can all say have happened over the last couple of years that have been a cause for concern for many other related parties. Mangifty.
Right, Roland. I mean, if I have the liberty to share my thoughts on what has just happened, I think it's so wrong. I think that if the people say they provided, they sought the police permission. I mean, they need to notify the police. That's what the law says. They've notified the police. They've gone out there. If the people were observing all of the protocols, this particular encounter then shatters the entire protocol. People come together. People are being attacked, and you listen to the lady who spoke finally and screaming and. I mean, we cannot be allowing these things to happen. I think that once they have the notification, they notify the police. If anything, they should be given protection, and not what we're seeing now. But of course, the police. I mean, the law should take its course, and I hope that his lawyers will be able to get them through all of these.
Well, definitely, and we do know that the regulation is a Public Order Act, and once you notify the police, then the appropriate protection, but also respect need to be given once the permits have been given.
Yeah. Well, it saddens my heart, but let's move on from there. Let's take a look at our latest Hotline documentary, and it focuses on the business of news. The need for news has never been greater in these times. People are constantly turning into broadcasts and scrolling up for coronavirus updates, but news outlets are grappling with a cash crunch. So the industry is adapting quickly. The Media, a Virus and Survival is our latest Joy News documentary produced by Araba Kumsin, our editor here. She examines how the news industry in Ghana is surviving this pandemic. Excerpts of the documentary that will air at 8:30 p.m. today.
COVID-19, the deadly virus which has spread to every continent on the globe.
What's it like to actually have the coronavirus and undergo treatment for it?
Just 63 days. That's how long it's taken 17,704 people across the African continent to get infected with coronavirus.
The lives of thousands have been snuffed out as the ripples of an unprecedented pandemic, the COVID-19, the scale of which has never been witnessed before, reverberated across the globe, bringing robust economies to their knees and putting almost every sector, including the media, in distress. Now more than ever, the need for information has become pronounced. But how will Ghana's news media navigate these uncharted waters to live up to their mandate as they reel under the impact of this pandemic? The harsh impact of the coronavirus pandemic has been felt across board, and nowhere is it more felt than in the newspaper industry, which has already been struggling. With the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, their woes have worsened. I'm here today to speak to Managing Editor of the Daily Dispatch, Ben Efson, on how the pandemic has affected their business and how they are adopting innovative ways to stay alive.
The Dispatch has been around for over 22 years. And COVID was the first time that for 1 month the paper was off the stands because the vendors were just not, people were not going to work because the vendors sell by the roadside. So for 1 month, there was no newspaper on the stand.
Because of the lockdown?
There was a lockdown.
Executive editor of the Daily Guide newspaper, Fortune Alimi, has lived this experience too. As a manager of one of the country's popular newspapers, he has had to take some tough decisions after patronage of their paper dropped significantly following the announcement of the lockdown.
We took the decision not to come out at all. But after coming out, we need to also take a lot of measures in order to stay afloat. As I said, we need to cut costs. We need to cut down even on production. We need to cut down on the hours of production so that we save production costs, electricity, transportation, fueling. We need to cut down on a lot of these things.
Let's talk about the impact it's had on the business. You mentioned that people were not patronizing the newspapers, especially during the lockdown. Why is that?
Why is that? Because people were not out. 2, the vendors were not even there. Even if they were there, they were not ready to also sacrifice their lives because they are also dealing with the public, the handling of money. You realize that one of the means of transmission of this disease is handling of money. You see hearing traders also contracting the disease. Where did they get it from? Through money.
All right, so that's a documentary put together by editor Araba Kumsin, who will be joining us via Zoom so we can talk about this. But certainly, this pandemic is taking a swipe at everybody. Araba, it's good to see you. You're looking amazing, as usual.
Look very beautiful, and a comprehensive insight so far we've seen.
Yeah.
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Gifty and Roland.
Thank you.
So the media, a virus, and survival. What more should we expect at 8:30 tonight?
Well, you should expect to hear from some of the media managers and broadcast journalists that I spoke to about how it is impacting directly on their work. and their sales. They are unable to generate enough revenue, and it's affecting them. They've had to take cost-cutting measures, and they are also making some proposals to government on how they can be assisted, because as you know, government has assured many businesses that it would offer them some form of assistance or support in the form of a stimulus package. And so the media industry managers are also looking forward to that, because in as much as we talk about other people's businesses and how the pandemic has affected them, we really feel to put a spotlight on how it's affecting us ourselves. And so we felt this was a great opportunity to put the spotlight on ourselves, let people see how it is also affecting us, because now more than ever, people, especially because they are under lockdown or they are working from home, they've had to depend more on information from the media. And so our work is more important now than ever. We've had to step up in terms of programming and offering information to the public. But it's also affecting us, and we thought that it was important for people to see how it is directly affecting us as well.
I see in the excerpt, you know, a part where you talk to people and they say, look, we've had to cut down on the numbers, and obviously advertising has been, you know, the advertising budgets have reduced, etc. What should we expect in terms of the cash burden that this pandemic has given media organizations as well?
Well, in terms of very specific numbers, we are unable to tell how much, you know, they've lost as a result of the pandemic. People were unable to give us the specifics, but generally, everybody across the board, people have had to, you know, adopt some cost-cutting measures, like laying off staff. Others to have asked their staff to go on a long leave. Others to have had to, you know, shut down for a few days. You heard Uncle Ben there saying that during the lockdown for the first few weeks, for at least a month, the people, they were not producing any newspapers. So it's really been hard hit by this pandemic. So a lot of them are looking forward to the support from government. Many say that we need to come together as a collective and push an agenda for government to see how important it is for them to lend a helping hand to us in order for us to, you know, deliver effectively on our mandate.
And before we let you go, though, have we had these media owners and the shareholders or editors able to tell us how now they've discovered perhaps new audiences, new demographics? If you take a look at how millennials and even young people tend to absorb news, social media also became a thing, at least in the international media as well.
Right, so it's interesting you asked me that, because I spoke to a communications and marketing lecturer at the University of Ghana who was suggesting to the media managers that because they are seeing a cut in revenue from advertisers, probably they should be gravitating towards the digital space. And so a lot of the media managers have told me that that is where they are looking at in terms of, you know, generating revenue, because obviously they've been affected by the revenue cut because people are not advertising on their platforms, on the traditional platforms. So for example, the Daily Dispatch newspaper is now going digital. Instead of buying it on the streets from a newspaper vendor, you can now subscribe and get it directly on your phone. And so they're hoping that they can chase the advertisers there in that digital space.
It's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to that, Araba. I'm also hoping that there will be the positive side as well. I believe that there are people who have seen some very you know, innovative ways of making money also with COVID-19. So I'm hopeful that that will come up as well. But take us through the times again, the times within which this documentary will be airing, both today and I believe tomorrow as well.
Okay, so on television, on the Joy News channel, the documentary is at 8:30 p.m. tonight after the Joy News Prime bulletin. So that's at 8:30 p.m. tonight. And tomorrow, there's a repeat of it after 9 o'clock, I believe. But on radio, it's a few minutes to 9 o'clock. But if you want to catch it on radio, on Joy 99.7 FM, you can tune in at 9 o'clock. The documentary will be aired then. I do believe that they'll be speaking to some members of the Ghana Journalists Association on the back of that. So that's for radio and television. But it's also available online on myjoyonline.com.
Great work, Arba, that you've put together. I put something small together for World Press Freedom Day. It wasn't easy, so I can imagine how this came out. and all the sleepless nights.
It was fun doing this.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Arba, thank you. Arba Kumsin, the beautiful Arba Kumsin. She's an editor here at Joy News.
Intelligent Arba Kumsin. Yeah.
Oh, of course. I thought that was a given. That's why I didn't add it.
All right. I'm a big feminist. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's Arba Kumsin's documentary, The Media, A Virus and Survival. It's coming up tonight. You want to make a date with us. And trust me, that will bring you excerpts all across the bulletins as we go along. Right now, Roland, it's time to get a bit jiggy, talk about entertainment.
Yeah, definitely. And Kadi will be here, give us the latest updates from the world of entertainment on AM Showbiz. And you will know that Beyond the Lockdown featured a lot of the organizers, the artists themselves, and those columnists, etc., on how coronavirus again has affected the industry. Stay with us.